What's going on, fellow investors? Hopefully you enjoy this interview I did with Kobo Resource Management. I interviewed both Ted and Paul. This interview was conducted to try to bring shareholders closer to the management and give people that don't know the company a little bit more insights on just who these individuals are that are heading off this company. So if you enjoy these interviews, make sure to check out their town hall webinar that's happening on March 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern Time with the lovely Ashley West. The registration link will be in the description of this video. Hope to see you there. I mentioned it with Ted, but I said I'll start it off with you. So how was your sleepover last night?
It was good. We had a good dinner out there, had a nice steak and some little bit of wine, and had a good chat.
You guys went out for dinner or at your house?
No, we went out for
You
dinner.
went out?
Yeah.
Nice. Where'd you go?
A place called Lot 88 in
Lot 88.
Burlington. Yes. So new steak restaurant.
Nice.
Wasn't too bad.
Okay. Yeah, so you know what? Let's start with where were you born? Where are you from?
I was born in beautiful Orillia, Ontario. Just a stepping off point for the Northern Ontario playground, and grew up in Barrie for most of my life, and then basically moved back to Orillia for the last couple of years of high school. Okay. And then got out of Dodge, as they say.
So what were you a good academic or?
Yeah, I was good. I mean, I always got good marks in school. More into sports and hanging out, having a good time. But
so little distractions.
Yeah, little distractions. But yeah, I did. Generally speaking, I was a pretty good student. I think if I can say, it kind of came easy to me, which was nice.
Yeah. So you can party a little bit more, and you were able to wake up in the morning and get the job
done. Yeah.
Sports. What kind of sports did you play?
Back in the day, I mean, football, rugby.
Oh yeah.
Wasn't really a big soccer guy. Obviously hockey. Played hockey for many years.
There's the trifecta right there.
Yeah. And then in my later years, as I matured a little bit more, I got into squash. Played actually when I was living out in Western Canada. I actually played fairly competitive squash out there for a number of years.
Okay. That's a tough sport.
Tough on the knees.
Yeah.
And so that ended about 10 years ago when my knees weren't letting me do it anymore.
Yeah.
So at that point, I knew I had to do something because I've always been a physically active guy. I like to be, I like to try to stay in shape if I can. Like to get out there and I find it as a good social outlet as well. But I took up cycling.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I've always cycled too, but I kind of took it up more seriously about 10 years ago, and so now I do. I ride probably 5,000 to 6,000 kilometers a year.
Oh yeah.
Mostly outdoors if I can, but with the world now with the new computers, there's a lot of really cool apps you can use for indoor riding on your bike. So. Do
you have a virtual headset?
Not a headset, but I use a thing called Zwift.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're into that stuff, but it's actually a game, but it's a game where you hook up your bike to a smart trainer, and it controls the power and your speed and stuff. It's like riding outdoors. You're just riding indoors.
Yeah.
Which in Canada, of course, it's nice because you can't ride year round outdoors.
Exactly.
And,
now, can you do that with your peer mates, like other guys you would?
Yeah. So if you have friends, so if there's a group of friends, you can actually meet up on Zwift, and you can go for a ride together. And so you can talk to them. They don't have voiceover, like they don't have a voice thing on it right now, but you can type.
Will.
Yeah, you can text each other and talk about stuff. So it's pretty cool. Like I said, I much prefer being outdoors because it's just nice. Go for a nice 2 or 3 hour bike ride on a Saturday afternoon when it's hot here, and it's just a good way to burn calories. And
do you is that a part of like your daily routine?
Oh,
when you get on the bike, is that a morning thing?
No, usually mornings, because with the project in Cote d'Ivoire, their early mornings, our early mornings are their middays, afternoons. So I'm usually up in the mornings, doing that. But usually knock off maybe 4:30, 5 o'clock if I can. And in the summer, because it's late here till 8, 9 o'clock at night, I just I get out at 5 o'clock, go for a ride. In the winter, it's maybe an hour and a half. 5:30 to 6:30 kind of thing, 6:37. Yeah, just it's a good distraction. It helps helps settle the mind after a busy day of work. And
I just finished talking to Ted about this. I don't like. I ask these questions. Like, I can see you guys are in shape, but to me, that's a big thing. It builds discipline and it helps just balance things out, right?
Yeah.
Do you diet at all, or do you just eat what you want because you exercise so much?
Well, that's the beauty of cycling, right?
You burn so many calories.
You can burn a lot of calories, and if you burn those calories, you don't need to watch. I mean, I do still try to be careful because as we age, of course, our metabolism tends to slow down. So it's a little harder. Like, I go to a conference like this, and 4 days of being here, I'll have to probably go home and shed a few pounds.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, would you say you're a competitive guy?
Oh yeah, very.
Well, you'd have to be.
That's the squash nature.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. I'll tell you a quick story there. One of my best friends and I, we joined the YMCA. I grew up here in East Toronto in Scarborough, and so we went to the YMCA and they had a squash court, right? So we had the two different balls.
Yeah.
So we had the slower ball or whatever.
Right.
But I turned around, right, and I was a baseball player, so I had a good swing. And I got him right in the area that you don't want to get someone. Yeah. Well, hey, maybe you might want to get your best buddy if you owe him, right?
No, you don't.
But I got him, and I don't remember playing squash with him after that. But
no, that can be very painful.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Sorry, do professional squash players wear jocks in that, or no?
No. I was never professional, but I was. Like, they have the different rankings. So you have the A, B, C levels.
Yeah.
I was kind of at the upper B, lower A level when I was living in Edmonton.
Okay.
That's where I played most of my squash out there. It's very. I think you have to be competitive to play squash because it's not one of those games where you can kind of get out there and. I guess you can lightly hit the ball around, but it's not in my nature. And the same with the biking. Like, you see somebody in front of you on the road, and you want to kind of catch up to them, but then if you catch up, you generally sit there and you chat for a little while too. So I find cycling, when you're out on the road too, it can be a very social event.
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
And then often you'll go in a group of people, right? And you'll bike within that, but you can feel the competitive juices as you're kind of you're kind of ticking along, and then all of a sudden somebody goes to the front, and it's like, okay, I guess we got to catch up here, right? So I would say I'm fairly competitive and. In most aspects of life, I guess you'd say.
That's good. Do you ever cycle up on the escarpment out there in the Niagara
all the
region?
time.
Yeah, it's probably a part of.
Yeah, like where I live, like I'm literally 5 minutes to what I would call quiet roads.
Okay.
And it's all up through that area, up through Kilbride, all up in that area, and there's hundreds of miles or kilometers of road up there that is, it's in good shape. It's not very busy.
Yeah.
And like I think in all the years I've been cycling in Burlington, I've had one incident, and even that incident was honestly pretty minor. Like I never fall off my bike. I've never been hit, so touch wood.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen, but I find it very safe out here, and most drivers up there are pretty respectful of you on the bike if you're not riding in the middle of the road, which I hate it when bikers do that myself as a biker. I think it's just not what you should be doing.
One more question on this, just because of the weather that we've had. Have you been out on your cycling in January, February?
I haven't, only because I've had my bike in some of the better days that we've had. My bike was in the shop getting fixed up for the summer riding schedule, so I missed a couple of those really nice days. But I'm sure in the next couple of weeks I'm going to get out. I get the bike back. Actually, it's done today, so I'll get the bike back and I'll get out there and hit the roads again.
You got kids?
Yeah, got a couple of daughters, 24 and 22. My oldest daughter, she's actually in South Korea right now.
Okay.
She's been over there for almost a year. She teaches English at a private school over there. And my youngest daughter is at Sheridan College in Oakville. She'll be in her final year of theatrical productions, but she may go back and do another program there on industrial design. So we're in the process of understanding that. She's applied, so we have to see if she gets accepted. I'm sure she will. Then we just got to work out those details. So yeah, busy on that front. My oldest daughter has been a bit tough having her away for a year, but good on her. She set her mind to it, went out and did it, and having a great time. So
yeah. You ever play poker? You a poker player?
A little bit here and there. We have I've got a neighbor of mine that does his annual poker thing, and but not a big guy. I know there was a poker tournament here at PDAC. I last night I didn't come down for it, but yeah, not a big poker guy. I'm one of those guys that can go to Vegas and really not worry about the poker or the gambling side of it. I go down and enjoy the shows and
the entertainment
stuff, right? So
let's talk a little bit about your professional career. So you come out of university, college.
University, I went from Aurelia. When I graduated, I went to Queen's University. Graduated from Queen's in 1983 with what was called an honors, BSc honors in geological sciences.
I think that's the same year Ted graduated.
Yeah, I think it was from. I think he was Laval, if I'm not. No, University of Ottawa. I think he was, right.
Yeah.
And then as a student, one of the beauty things about Canadian geologists is that we were able to work. So when I came out of university, I actually had 3 years of field experience. So every year I would go up north. So we were up in the Yukon for most of my younger years as a student. And then I got hired right out of university with a company called Echo Bay Mines, which eventually became part of the merger with Kinross.
Mm-hmm.
I spent almost 18 years with Echo Bay, worked my way up from being a project geologist. My first real job with them was up in the Northwest Territories. I got dropped off January 2nd at minus 50 to build a camp and run 2 drills. Had a pretty successful program there. We actually found a small deposit that eventually got mined.
Oh yeah, that's a big success there.
Yeah, so, early on, right? Like
right.
First thing I did. I mean, we didn't mine it. We actually sold it to another company. They ended up mining it.
Yeah.
And then I worked my way up the ladder.
Did you have shares in that company or?
Oh yeah. Well, it was a big mining company. Like it was at the
Okay.
time, it was like the second or third largest producer in North America. But I had, we got options, and they weren't called RSUs back then, but they were effectively RSUs at the time. So yeah, I did have some stock, and actually that's what helped me buy my first house.
Mm-hmm.
Was able to take advantage of that.
Nice.
So I worked my way up the ladder there over the course of those 17 or 18 years. Ended up doing a lot of international work with them. Ended up actually moving down to Denver. Took on the role of project development supervisor, and I basically managed anything outside of the Americas. I was over like in Asia, Australia, Africa. Did a lot of work just looking at it and evaluating projects for the company.
What time frame was that? What year, decade?
So, I graduated in 1983, and so I immediately began working. I worked in the territories. I worked at the Lupin mine originally, and then that other exploration program I had mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So I did that. I think it was the early 90s I moved to Denver, and I was in Denver for about 6 years.
So you got to see John Elway in his prime?
Yeah, actually I timed it just perfectly. I was in Denver when the Avalanche, the Quebec Nordique moved, and they won the Cup that year. And then I was there for the two Super Bowls, which was phenomenal.
Yeah.
So it was. I'm actually kind of lucky because when I was in Edmonton for 6 years. That's when Edmonton won all the Stanley Cups.
So wait a minute, how come the Leafs haven't won?
I don't know. I guess I lost my golden touch on the Leafs. Yeah, it was. So
you saw Gretzky?
Oh yeah. I mean, they actually used to hang out at the squash club that I used to go to. They would come down there, party all the time. I've actually sipped 3 times from the Stanley Cup.
No way.
Yeah, because they actually brought it down to our club. The first time they won, they actually came to our club. There was Messier and all the guys, Gretzky and Lowe and all those guys, and because we kind of knew them.
Oh yeah.
So they brought it into the club, and we cracked a couple of bottles of champagne, and
that's a wicked story, man.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, so it was a lot of fun out there. Actually, it's a kind of an out of the way place, but I was in the bush a lot too, right? But when I would come out, it was a great place to be, and I had a bunch of friends in Calgary, so I used to go down to Calgary quite a bit and hang out with them, and just a good period of my life there for sure.
Yeah, that sounds about it. Okay, so you got into mining in the mid to late 80s?
Mid 80s, yeah. Early mid 80s. Been in it pretty much my whole life. I did take a bit of a hiatus, sort of in 1999 when there was the Asian currency crisis, the price of gold crashed. I ended up becoming a broker for about 5-6 years. But then when things started to heat up again in 2006, I had a bunch of my colleagues that said, "Sarge, what are you doing? Like, what you got to get back into mining."
Right.
And so I got enticed into coming out of the brokerage world, and I ended up running a company called Grandview Gold for about 6 years. Had some projects up in Northern Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I just sort of did a lot of consulting. And then more recently, I was the director of geology for a company called Largo, which had a vanadium mine in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
So I was down there for 3 years, working on and off, sort of on a rotational basis. And then the whole Kobo thing. I've been working with Ted since sort of 2015 on Kobo, and we went public last
that was
year.
sort of an arranged marriage kind of thing.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, our chairman, a guy named Frank Ricciuti, who I've known for years, and Ted knew him for a number of years too. Ted was trying to find a geologist, because Ted is a lawyer.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get him to be a geologist. He's actually a good student. He's learning quite a bit about geology. He was looking for somebody to help him with this project in West Africa, and Frank knew me, and I was consulting at the time. So he says, "Why don't you talk to Paul?" So that's how Ted and I got together on this Kobo thing. Mm-hmm. So, as always it's always through contacts, right? I always tell my kids, whatever you do, make sure you get out there and talk to people and network and do all that stuff, because that's where you find your best opportunities 99% of the time. Yeah, for sure.
Well, since you've been in mining for so long, obviously you're a disciplined guy, you're a competitive guy, but it's mining, right? There's a lot of failure.
Yeah.
So how, let's talk a little bit about these failures and, how you kind of manage them, because I'm sure there were a few.
Well, yeah, I guess the biggest one, almost hate to say it, but Great Bear, as you know, who sold their project to Kinross for $1.6 billion, that was the Grandview property.
Wow.
Now, we had actually discovered the hinge zone, and we were sort of on our next step back. Our next step back holes would have stepped us back far enough to hit what Great Bear actually hit. And I think, and I don't know the exact story of how they found it, but my understanding is that they were actually doing what we had intended to do. But that was in 2010, 11, I guess it was, when the market just fell out.
Yeah.
And we just could not raise money. It was impossible to raise money at that point.
So you got rid of the property?
Well, we tried to hang on to it, but we eventually had to sell it back to the guy that owned it, and then he ended up doing a deal on it and sold it, so he didn't even know what was going on. So that's probably my failure. We didn't find it. But I think it's like a lot of other projects, right, where it's a progressive thing, like everybody learns from the operator in front of them. And unfortunately, we were just one operator too soon. The thing sat dormant for, I think, 8-9 years before anybody did anything with it.
Take me to the day that those results. We got to go through it, man.
Yeah, it was a bit painful, because I'm like going, holy.
Did you punch a wall? Did you throw your phone? What happened?
I didn't do that.
Did you make a call?
Oh yeah.
You were talking to all the old guys?
I called one of my old directors.
I knew we shouldn't have sold the property.
Well, and that was, honestly, that was my argument. I said, we've got to do something to hold on to this thing. I had no idea that zone was there, just because it just hadn't been discovered.
Right.
But, we got phenomenal results on this hinge zone, and it was a classic Red Lake style deposit.
Right.
It was small, and we just couldn't, we just couldn't raise the money. Grandview actually became, I think we were on the TSX, not the V. We were actually on the TSX, and we had one of the highest percentage gains on the TSX when we announced those initial results. So it was a hot little property.
Right.
And it was in the right district. It had all the right things going for it. It's kind of like the Kobo story. It had all the right things going for it. So trust me, I'm going to make sure we don't make that mistake in Kobo. But yeah, that was a bit painful. But you
were that close.
We were that close. You call it a failure, but again, to me, it's just part of the process. And I give them credit for making the discovery. They obviously, stepping back and drilling that hole, I think they nicked in their very upper part of their hole. I think they nicked what is now really the deposit. Mm-hmm. And again, I think, had we been able to drill the holes that we wanted to drill, we would have done the same thing, basically.
Yeah.
But again, I give them credit for recognizing it in the rock and doing what they did. So good on them. And that was probably the biggest one. I tried to recommend.
Not really. I guess.
Yeah, I know. That's what I say. It's not really a failure.
Yeah.
I don't think I've had any failures. I don't view them as failures. I just view them as part of the learning curve. With Echo Bay, I had recommended we pick up Bulyanhulu in Africa, in Tanzania, and for various reasons, the company just wasn't into it.
Yeah.
And I was there when they were drilling a 600-meter deep hole that had just hit, and they were in the process of drilling a 1,200-meter deep hole. And I said, if that 1,200-meter deep hole hits, that's a multi-million-ounce deposit. And it hit, but again, it just, for whatever reason, it wasn't a project that Echo Bay wanted. And so that was more, I don't call that a failure, I call that frustrating, right? Because that was, to me, that was a deposit.
Right.
And that was exactly what a company like Echo Bay at the time should have bought and could have bought, but they didn't for whatever reasons. And that I found frustrating. I don't call it a failure. I think I made the right call. And I think that's the thing, like with all the experience I have, I think I'm in a good position to make that kind of call now. And so, here we are today, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, it was a great career, a great learning ground, some fantastic people at Echo Bay that we worked with over the years. And, yeah, just it's been a good industry. It's had its ups and downs, as you know. But I love it, and I keep coming back to it. And I don't know what else I would do, quite honestly, with my life.
Yeah.
My mother knew I was destined for this because as a kid I used to come home with all kinds of rocks and fossils in my pockets, and so she knew I was going to do something like this, I think, from early days onward. So yeah.
Well, Paul, I think it's been a great interview with you and Ted. Some really fun stories that I'm sure shareholders will enjoy and probably didn't know.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And hopefully, you get some new shareholders from our community. It's up to them. But we've got the webinar on March 19th, 7 p.m. You'll be there?
Yep, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, we'll be there, tell the story. And I think we got a great opportunity and got a good team in place. And I think it's going to be a very, very successful story for people. So we're really looking forward to pushing this thing forward over the next year or so.
All right, so look for the registration link below in this video for the webinar on March 19th at 7 p.m. Again, really good interview.
Good.
Sorry about that.
Great meeting you too.
Yeah, you've been around a lot of winners.
Yep.
You've had some good experiences in your life, and I look forward to following the story.
Yep. We're going to have a success, I think.
All right.
All right.